Have you ever looked at a person and wished you could figure them out more quickly so you'd know exactly how to relate, when to trust them, and how to connect on a deeper level? That's the central question driving Patrick King's How to Speed Read People, and in today's video, we'll be delving into all the fascinating insights he provides to help decode personalities, habits, and motivations. We'll look at everything from ancient personality theories to modern psychology, from reading someone's facial expressions to spotting patterns in their childhood upbringing, and understanding exactly how self-esteem or past experiences can shape behavior. As always, if this interests you, we recommend buying and reading the entire book through the link below, because nothing compares to having the full context in your hands. But let's begin our deep dive into the big ideas behind how to speed read people. Let's start with the notion of why we should even care about personality. Wouldn't life be simpler if we just took people's words at face value? Patrick King says, "There's so much more going on beneath the surface, and this complexity is exactly what can create misunderstandings if we're not paying attention. Consider that people have been trying to pin down personality classes as far back as the ancient Greeks, who believed temperament was linked to bodily fluids like black bile and blood. Since then, we've had Freud's theories about the ID, the ego, and the superego, revealing how unconscious drives can explain human behavior. Moving into modern times, we have a better understanding of how biology and the brain might contribute to who we are. So it's not just about ephemeral theories. King mentions that researchers see connections between brain regions, genetics, hormones, and personality traits like extroversion or agreeableness, which in turn reveal how we respond to stress or joy. But Patrick King stresses that the critical piece of all this is applying these insights in everyday interactions. When you can spot broad strokes of how someone sees the world, you also gain clues into how they'll respond to you, what type of connection they crave, or how to communicate with them effectively. Want to know if someone thrives in big crowded parties, or if they'd rather have a quiet night at home? You might look to frameworks like the Big Five personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, the MBTI categories that pair up introversion versus extroversion, intuition versus sensing, and so on, or even the simplified Kiersey temperaments. But if you stop at just labeling people as, say, INTP or Guardian, you risk overlooking the many shades of gray that make everyone unique. Instead, think of these personality frameworks as rough tools to approach the bigger question. How does this person think? How do they typically feel? And what do they value enough to shape their choices and behaviors? Of course, personality quizzes are just one piece of the puzzle. Patrick King suggests we also learn to read people's expressions, gestures, and posture, because while someone might consciously present a smile, their body language can reveal a deeper tension. King references the work of psychologist Paul Ekman, famous for studying microexpressions, those tiny fleeting facial movements that show true emotion before someone has time to hide it. A microexpression might reveal fear, frustration, or happiness in just a split second. And once you train yourself to see them, you can glean a treasure trove of clues about what someone's really feeling. Macro expressions are the bigger, more deliberate reactions, the broad smiles, the exaggerated frowns, that might be more rehearsed or socially appropriate. If you also pay attention to the rest of the body, like someone rubbing their neck when they're anxious, pointing their feet toward the exit when they want to escape, or crossing their arms protectively, you start to form an overall picture that's more accurate than words alone. Still, King warns, never to look at just one gesture in isolation. Context is everything. A person might cross their arms simply because they're cold, not because they're angry or resistant to conversation. So it's better to look for consistent patterns, the set of the shoulders, the tension around the lips, the direction someone's feet are pointing, the tone of voice. If all these signals align, you're probably onto something. If not, you might be jumping to conclusions. Part of speed reading, someone is noticing these patterns quicker than most people do. This means paying attention with all your senses, from noticing voice fluctuations to seeing changes in the eyes. Speaking of eyes, Patrick King emphasizes that people's eyes often carry the core of their emotional expression. A calm, direct gaze can imply confidence or warmth. A quick darting glance might indicate nervousness or an attempt to hide something, and an inability to meet your eyes might reflect shame, guilt, or even cultural differences about eye contact. The moral here is that we should never rely on only one dimension, like just the eyes or just the arms, but gather as many subtle cues as possible before deciding what someone is feeling. Once you have a sense of these external clues, the next step is to understand emotional cues, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in. Patrick King frequently references Goleman's framework for emotional intelligence, which includes self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Self-awareness is the starting point. If you can't manage your own emotions or be aware of them, you might project your own insecurities onto others. Meanwhile, social awareness means picking up on other people's emotional temperature, noticing what they say and don't say, reading between the lines, and responding appropriately. King points out a simple example. Imagine you have a coworker who always says, "I'm fine," but they're unusually quiet. And anytime you ask questions, they respond a bit curtly. That might mean they genuinely are just busy, but it could also indicate frustration they're not ready to divulge. When you see a mismatch between the words and the nonverbal cues, that's your clue to dig deeper or show some empathy. Sometimes something as simple as, "Hey, you seem a bit off today, anything on your mind?" can open a person up, showing you truly notice the discrepancy in their demeanor. Humor, King says, is another insight into people's emotional landscape and deeper character. Some individuals use dark humor as a shield, a way to push people away or express cynicism. Others might prefer self-deprecating jokes to fish for reassurance. Meanwhile, playful, warm humor can build bridges and lighten a serious conversation. The type of humor someone uses and how they react to different styles of humor can tell you a lot about their worldview, their comfort level, and their emotional security. But what if you want to go even deeper and uncover someone's core values or hidden motivations? King proposes indirect questions and reflective exercises. Instead of directly asking, "What are your values?" you might ask, "Where do you happily invest your time versus where do you feel conflicted or resistant?" These questions get to the heart of what drives someone's choices. A personal reflection exercise could involve the 7 stories method, identifying the accomplishments you're proud of and describing why they mattered to you. When someone shares these stories, you get powerful insight into the themes that matter in their life, maybe perseverance, compassion, creativity, or leadership. Another interesting tool is a simplified version of Carl Jung's test, where you describe various images, or in King's adaptation, you might describe a color, an animal, a body of water, a white room, and then provide 3 adjectives for each. If you pay attention to how the abstract descriptions might map onto how that person really sees themselves or the world, you can spot hidden mindsets. For instance, describing a peaceful meadow as unchanging, safe, and quiet might hint at a desire for security and stability, or perhaps a reluctance to embrace change. We rarely talk about ourselves in direct, point-blank ways. But in these disguised exercises, we often reveal more than we realize. Of course, beyond personality traits, nonverbal signals, and personal stories, we all have underlying drivers that push our behavior in big or small ways. Patrick King reiterates that humans generally do what we can to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But contrary to what we might think, the drive to avoid pain is usually stronger than the drive for pleasure. That principle can explain why people sabotage themselves, keep secrets, or cling to old habits that don't serve them anymore. Related to this, King points to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which starts with the basics: food, water, safety, and moves up to higher levels: belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. At any point in time, a person's priorities are often determined by where they are on this pyramid. Someone struggling with financial woes might hardly care about self-actualization or philosophical meaning if they can't pay the rent. Another angle is David McClelland's model of affiliation, achievement, and power, which are the big 3 motivators. Some folks want acceptance and harmony, some want success and measurable accolades, and others crave influence, either to be respected or to enact change. If you can figure out which of these buttons is biggest for someone, you can predict what they'll chase and how they'll behave in group settings or under stress. Motivation also ties in with defense mechanisms. Patrick King says that people often cover up vulnerabilities or uncomfortable truths with strategies like denial, projection, or overcompensation. If you see someone blaming everyone else for their problems, they might be in denial about their own role. By identifying these patterns, you can better grasp what's really behind their excuses or anger. That doesn't mean you push them into a corner or call them out harshly. Rather, it gives you empathy and strategic insight on how to interact with them constructively. Of course, King also gives attention to how childhood shapes adult behavior, especially in close relationships. Attachment styles, secure, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant, often sprout from how caregivers responded to a child's early needs. A secure attachment means we generally trust others and feel okay getting close. An anxious, preoccupied style might emerge from a childhood of inconsistent attention, leading to constant worry that a loved one will leave. A dismissive avoidant style could evolve from a child who was forced to rely on themselves emotionally because caretakers were absent or distant, so they learned to suppress the need for closeness. A fearful avoidant style might reflect a chaotic upbringing with both desires for intimacy and fear of it. In adulthood, these attachment styles show up in how people approach friendships or romantic partnerships, whether they cling too tightly, push others away, or find a balanced approach. Similarly, childhood experiences can mold self-esteem and identity. People who were constantly criticized might grow up feeling unworthy or anxiety-prone, while those who were praised for everything might develop narcissistic traits, never learning to handle constructive feedback. Everyone's story is different, and the same type of upbringing can play out in unique ways, but understanding these patterns can shed light on the reasons behind someone's confidence issues or controlling behaviors. Birth order theories sometimes get thrown in here too, even if the science is a bit shaky. The popular idea is that firstborn children are more responsible and controlling because they had to fulfill a caretaker-like role. Middle children supposedly become the peacekeepers or the ones who fight for attention, and the youngest can be rebellious or charmingly free-spirited. Parenting styles, authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, or uninvolved, also leave profound marks, shaping whether someone learns how to cope with life's demands or runs away from them. If you notice a coworker or a friend having a crippling fear of making mistakes, you might guess they grew up under authoritarian parents who punished every failure. If you see someone who ignores rules entirely, maybe they had painfully permissive parents who never provided structure. Being aware of these influences can help you see beyond the surface behaviors to the root cause. In essence, How to Speed Read People weaves all these perspectives together: personality frameworks, nonverbal communication, emotional intelligence, deeper motivations, and childhood influences. Patrick King says that once you learn to blend these elements, you can form a faster, more accurate read on who someone is. You'll know which conversation topics light them up or which environments make them squirm. You'll identify the best ways to build rapport, whether it's by praising their achievements, empathizing with their anxieties, or simply giving them space. You'll also be able to predict tension points, like if you suspect someone with an anxious, preoccupied attachment style might need more reassurance in group projects, or if a highly achievement-driven coworker wants to see measurable progress to stay motivated. Remember, though, that reading people effectively also means reading yourself. This is one of King's overarching themes. Self-awareness is key. If you can't identify your own triggers, biases, or preferences, you'll risk projecting them onto someone else. So if you find yourself feeling impatient because a person is moving too slowly, maybe you should ask whether it's them being slow or you being too driven by urgency. If you catch yourself step by step, you'll become more patient about noticing other people in a well-rounded way, rather than jumping to judgments that might be purely subjective. Since we've now taken this thorough journey through Patrick King's How to Speed Read People, what can you do next? You might start by practicing microexpression awareness. Become a people watcher in everyday life. Notice how often you see those tiny flashes of emotion before someone's official expression surfaces. Or listen for words that imply someone's deeper motivations, like, "Oh, I just want to be recognized for all the work I do," or I really prefer to keep the peace. You can gently test out indirect questions too. What was your favorite achievement from the last year? Or what kind of environment do you feel you thrive in? Paying close attention to the answers can be incredibly revealing. In the end, being able to speed read people isn't about manipulation or picking people apart. It's about forming authentic, gratifying connections. It's about knowing when to offer encouragement, when to give someone space, and when to push them out of a comfort zone they secretly want to escape. It's about seeing how your personality interacts with theirs, so you can navigate disagreements and collaborations with more empathy. It can even help you spark deeper friendships, because people love feeling truly seen. So that's the magic of Patrick King's How to Speed Read People. It's a blend of ancient wisdom, modern psychology, and practical tips for spotting signals in body language, emotional tone, humor, personal stories, and motivational drivers. All these angles help paint a detailed picture of who someone is, who you're dealing with day to day, whether it's a coworker, an old friend, or someone you've only just met. And if you want to master these concepts and integrate them more thoroughly into your life, then, as always, we recommend buying and reading the entire book through the link below, because the nuance, the examples, and the practice exercises King lays out can transform these ideas from a casual interest into a real skill set. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep exploration of how to decode and speed read people. I hope you found some practical pointers that will help you in your everyday life, whether you're at work, in a social setting, or just curious about your own past. Remember that understanding people is the key to forging better connections and making smarter decisions. And in a world where everyone has their own complexities, having the tools to parse those complexities can give you a massive advantage both personally and professionally. So keep observing, keep asking the right questions, and keep honing your emotional intelligence. Hey, you might be surprised how quickly you start catching those microexpressions or puzzling out why someone's so guarded or so eager to impress. That brings us to the end of our summary of how to speed read people. We've covered everything from personality frameworks like the Big Five and MBTI, to observing body language, employing emotional intelligence, exploring deeper motivations, and understanding how childhood shapes adult behavior. If these insights resonated with you, be sure to pick up the full book for even richer examples and practice exercises. Thanks for watching, and remember you can find the link below if you want to buy and read the full text. See you next time, and until then, happy people watching.